What's going on, America? Kev from Kevin's Corner, where I try to make sense out of nonsense. And this video is hard to make sense out of, you know? I mean, I think that I might have to go and get a PhD or, something in psychology or psychiatry so I can study the minds of people suffering from either Trump derangement syndrome or wokeness. I really need to find out the impacts that this stuff have on the human brain. So today, our story takes us down to Springfield, Ohio, where they've had this big influx of Haitians that were put in there by politicians that have impacted the city. And you would think that the residents there that might have been impacted in a negative way would properly place the blame on the people who put them there, especially if the citizens didn't get a chance to vote that these people can come there. But in this case, it appears that Trump derangement syndrome or wokeness have infected this person's brain so much to where they're going to misplace the blame in regards to a serious tragedy that took place. So this young man's son, who was killed on the bus by a Haitian that was driving improperly and hit the bus and ended up killing his son and hurting others, this man decides to come and do a press conference addressing the national attention that's been shined on what's going on down there in Springfield. And this is his position on this. It is not to talk about, wow, you know what, my son would be here if it wasn't because of this. Because, see, what it is cause and effect. See, my son would be alive if these people wouldn't have been here. He's not going to address it from that standpoint. What he's going to do is allow his wokeness and his Trump derangement syndrome and his white guilt to make him not place the blame on the politicians, not place the blame on the Haitian that was illegally driving, but instead on Trump, J.D. Vance, and the folks that recognize what's going on down there that is impacting these folks in Springfield in a negative way. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. What's going on, America? Welcome to Kevin's Corner, where I try to make some sense out of nonsense. Before we get into this video, I need y'all to do me a favor. Hit that like button, share my videos. Please make sure you subscribe. Make sure your notification buttons are turned on to all. Subscribe to my alternative channel, just in case YouTube give me the slip or something. You'll know how to find me. Don't forget to check me out with all the podcasts and follow me on Rumble in the Jungle. All the links are listed below. If you want to donate to my channel, feel free. Those links are below as well. Now, with no further ado,
welcome to my party. We're just getting started.
One of them, as I mentioned earlier this week, was an 11-year-old boy named Aiden Clark. He was killed, and more than a dozen other students were seriously injured last year by a Haitian national who crossed the center line and crashed into a school bus on the first day of school. This Haitian national was on the roads illegally. His driver's license was from Mexico. Now, on Tuesday, the father of Aiden Clark addressed the national coverage of his son's death, and here's what he said. Listen.
Before we get into this is what's fascinating about this. I know that when these type of stories pop up on the news and it gains national attention, the Democrats jump in and their defense is, well, not all illegal immigrants commit crimes. They're not all murders. They're not all whatever. And I get that. They're not. But even if something accidentally happens where they didn't do it intentionally, the difference is between the illegal immigrant and an American citizen. If an American citizen does this, we judge them based on their citizenship and our laws. But when an illegal immigrant does something like this, they shouldn't have even been here in the first place. If they would have never been here, then that would have never happened. So not only should we, of course, hold them accountable, but we should hold the people who brought them here accountable as well, because guess what? It's cause and effect. So yeah, I'm an American citizen. I hear about a tragedy like this and I'm going, I just messed up. This person needs to be held accountable. But when I hear that somebody that should have never been here in the first place has caused the death of a family member of mine, then there's no justification for that. You can't just say, well, stuff happens. Stuff happens. No, I'm going, y'all allowed stuff to happen. In fact, you were a key part of that stuff happening. The people who brought them here. So I already know. Some people are going to say, well, you know what? The Americans do things like that. Yeah, but guess what? They're Americans. They're already here. They belong here and they'll be punished accordingly versus somebody that shouldn't have been here in the first place.
We felt it would be in our best interest to be here after recent comments. I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. I bet you never thought anyone would ever say something so blunt. But if that guy killed my 11-year-old son, the incessant group of hate-spewing people would leave us alone. The last thing that we need is to have the worst day of our lives violently and constantly shoved in our faces.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that man just came out and said something like that? He said that I wish my 11-year-old son would have been killed by a 50-year-old white man. So in other words, I'm going to add a racial element to this. I'm so woke that I am going to overlook cause and effect. I'm so woke that I am going to not realize that it's not about race in regards to all of these illegal immigrants in our city, that if they wouldn't have been here, my son would be alive. But instead, I'm going to focus on a racial element. I'm going to make it appear that, you know what, the only reason that this has gained attention and people are upset about this is because it's an illegal immigrant and it's a Haitian and they're people of color, and therefore all of your attention, all of your comments, everybody who's, focused on this or even brought this case up, they're motivated by race. And this wouldn't even be an issue if a white man would have hit my son and killed him. That right there is showing that I'm so woke that I'm asleep.
But even that's not good enough for them. They take it one step further. They make it seem as though our wonderful Aiden appreciates your hate, that we should follow their hate. And look what you've done to us. We have to get up here and beg them to stop. Using Aiden as a political tool is, to say the least, reprehensible for any political purpose.
So now listen to this guy. He's talking about your hate, and my son wouldn't have wanted this. Now, it's sad that this happened to this young man, but I can look at him and tell he's young. He's probably liberal. And what he is doing now is trying to assign some type of motive to anybody who have heard about this case and said, this is not right. So now he's saying, my son wouldn't want your hate. And I'm thinking, your son probably would prefer to be alive. And you are now talking about the people who are concerned and heard what happened and is saying, man, this is not right. You're saying their feelings and their tension and their interest in this is all motivated by hate. Right there. Liberalism, man. Wokeness. So I would love to study, people like this who they're not able to think. They always are in activism mode to where none of what he's saying is making sense. He don't even realize what he's implying here.
And speaking of morally bankrupt, politicians, Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump, they have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain.
So in other words, they have heard about what took place with your son. They're concerned. They're willing to mourn with you. They're willing to bring it to everybody's attention so that we could, of course, make some changes in regards to illegal immigrants being thrown in cities and these type of things happening to them. They're able to point at the party that, of course, inspired this and brought these people here, which led to your son's death. And if that party wouldn't have did that, your son would be alive. The fact that they are mentioning your son's name versus the party that contributed to this by sending them there. They're not the ones talking about your son. They're not mentioning his name because, see, for them to make this into a national issue, they would have to accept the blame. They would have to say, well, you know how those Haitians got there? Well, Kamala Harris, she signed something to say that, they got this status. The Democrats brought them there. They would have to then explain, well, why did y'all bring them there and stick them there in the first place, which led to this? So whenever tragedies take place as a result of Democrats' policies, especially when it comes to the border, they never go and meet with the parents. They never want to talk about the tragedy. They never want to mention the kid's name. They don't want these stories coming out at all. But yet the people who recognize what took place and is willing to say, man, we want to remember your son. We want to make sure that things are changed so this never happens to another American or another kid. Those are the people this guy is saying that is motivated by racism and is being politicized. You see the twistedness? And I have to contribute it to either TDS or wokeness, or he just is so caught up in white guilt and activism that he is misplacing the blame.
This needs to stop now. They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members.
See, there it is. So yeah, it's obvious that this young man is so Trump deranged that he can't even set that aside to realize that Trump and the conservatives and Republicans are really an advocate for him. We're an advocate for Aiden. We recognize Aiden didn't have to die if illegal immigration wasn't an issue, if Democrat policies didn't push all of these people into cities like this, overcrowd them, and then allow folks to ride around with no licenses and all of these things. We're the ones at fault. That's what it is. His activism is greater than his logic at this point. And he's assigning hate to anybody who is saying, well, these people shouldn't be here because they're legal. It's not because they're black, Haitian, or whatever. First of all, being Haitian is not a race. It's a nationality. But this guy right here, though, like all Democrats and leftists, they always assign an evil motive to anybody who has common sense and wants some law and order, and is saying, you guys right here are allowing chaos to take place. When we speak out against it or bring it to anybody's attention, it's because we're racist.
However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies.
And I wonder if he's going to be waiting for Kamala Harris to give him a call and apologize. I wonder if he's going to be waiting for the Biden administration to even mention or recognize that his son was killed. I wonder if he's going to recognize the fact that if these people wouldn't have even been stuffed into Springfield, his son most likely would still be alive. I wonder if he's going to be waiting for that call. But he decides to get upset with the people who do recognize the tragedy.
To clear the air, my son, Aiden Clark, was not murdered. He was accidentally killed by an immigrant from Haiti. In order to live like Aiden, you need to accept everyone. Choose to shine, make the difference, lead the way, and be the inspiration.
So you see his justification is that, well, he wasn't murdered. He was accidentally killed by, somebody that was, from Haiti that was driving what, illegally? See, that's no different than if an American citizen accidentally killed your son on the bus because they've been drunk driving or something like that, or their license was suspended and they decided, well, I'm just going to quick run around the corner and get some, and they mess around and kill your son. That's not just your regular accident. Like, I'm in compliance with the law. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I got insurance, and this and this and that. I wasn't reckless. And hey, out of nowhere, man, boom, ran into the bus. This is, I shouldn't be driving anyway. I'm driving around illegally, so that even means that there should be more blame on me than the average person that just has a random accident. This man not only shouldn't be in the country, but he shouldn't even be driving. And this guy's more interested in making sure nobody looks at the illegal immigrants in a negative way than recognizing it's because of Democrats and these illegal immigrants, and the fact that he was driving illegally resulted in his son's death. Now, if that ain't Trump derangement syndrome, if that ain't wokeness on the brain, I don't know what is. So Matt Walsh is going to go ahead and close out and weigh in on his take concerning this young man.
As a father, I almost never criticize people who've gone through something like that. I don't criticize them for how they grieve. I don't criticize them for what they say in the aftermath, usually. But after the remarks we just heard, unfortunately, I feel compelled to say something because, for one thing, this man is slandering people like myself, slandering people who have spoken up for his son. He's attributing false motives to us. He's labeling us racist and hateful and so on. And we have a right to correct the record, especially since this man is now using his son's death to make a political statement, and it's a false statement. It's a harmful statement. It's a statement that if people listen to him, more kids are going to die. So I'm going to repeat what the father of Aiden Clark just said. He said, quote, "I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man." That was the line that he wrote down, prepared, and then delivered. I mean, even just writing, just the first part, "I wish that my son was killed." No, there's no conceivable valid reason to ever write that line down or say it. There's no context where that isn't incredibly demented and twisted. He didn't say that he wished his son was never killed. Instead, he said that he wished his son was killed by somebody else, so that other people wouldn't draw any unapproved conclusions. His comments only go to show that white guilt is a sickness. I mean, this man is infected in his brain. This is an infection that has burrowed deep into his mind and soul. He's got to live with what he just said there for the rest of his life. And he doesn't realize how disgusting and repugnant it is And it's so deep in his soul that even the death of a child did not shake him free of this. I can't comprehend how a thought like this even enters your head. A man kills your child, and your wish is that a man of a different race had killed him? That a man of your own race had killed him?
So in other words, this young man is more interested in virtue signaling than really speaking out about the tragedy and how it could have been avoided and the impact that Democrat policies has had on his life. He's so interested in virtue signaling and saying, you know what? This would be totally different if it was a white guy, an older white guy. He's going right to these talking points of, you know what, if it was, a black person doing it versus a white person doing it, they would have handled it totally different. Nobody would have cared if it was just a white man who did it because it's a black guy who did it. Now everybody's shining a spotlight on it because of racism or something. No, because these folks are legally here, they shouldn't be here. That's why. He's missing the point because he's blinded by wokeism, activism, TDS, and all of that. So he uses it as a time to come out here and virtue signal and politicize this as well. You don't think the Democrats listening to him misplace this blame aren't saying this is great for us politically? We're the cause of what happened to his child, and what is he doing? He's blaming our opponents. He's blaming the people who, if they weren't charged, this would have never happened. There you go. And I feel sad for the guy. I mean, it's sad that he lost his son, but good grief, man. The TDS is deep in this dude.
It seems to me that after suffering such a tragedy, most of your anger would be reserved for the man who actually killed your son. Instead, you're defending him. Well, let's be clear, he didn't murder my son. Yeah, he did. He's not supposed to be in this country. He's not supposed to be on the road. He's on the road illegally. Yeah, he murdered your son. You're less angry at the guy who killed your son than you are at politicians who you don't like. And the rest of the anger that you have should be directed at the politicians who let that guy into the country. If he hadn't been allowed in, if our immigration system was functional, if our borders were enforced, your son would be alive. The terrible racist right-wingers that you hate so much, guess what? If we had our way, your son would be alive. If we were in charge, we had our way. If Donald Trump was in charge and he had his way, your son would be living today. But we're the problem.
Now, the way that Matt interpreted that and weighed in on that shows and highlights the difference between how a common sense person thinks about things versus somebody who is so caught up in activism. They're so progressive that they process things irrationally. They process it through the lens of activism, of wokeness, of DEI. They process all of these things through the lens of victimization, all of these things. They process it through that, which compromises their common sense. Matt Walsh, as he went through this, he's a father. He processed it rationally. If this was to happen to a regular American citizen, the common sense process would be, whoa, who did it? How did it happen? You're telling me the person wasn't even supposed to be here? Oh, and nobody is even being accountable for this person being here? Oh, so now we got politicians that come in and say, hey, look, we heard about what happened. We're sorry about it. And you know what? We're going to hold people accountable. We're going to make some changes so this don't happen to anybody else. This person should be thankful. He should be going, I'm glad somebody recognizes what took place with my son. I'm glad somebody cares about him. I'm glad somebody's mentioning my son's name so he's just not forgotten about. But instead, this guy looks at all of this as these people are using this as an opportunity to attack the illegal immigrants and highlight their hate and spread their racism and all of this stuff. It's compromised this father's common sense beyond his ability to see the tragedy as it is, who's responsible for it, and of course, moving forward, saying, well, what needs to take place to make sure this never happens again. But as I said in the beginning of my video, I really think that I need to start studying wokeness and how it impacts human behavior and thinking. Because after hearing that father, I cannot understand how he drew these conclusions and ended up landing on Trump and all of them are to blame. They're pushing hate. And it was simply an accident that couldn't have been avoided. Can't even see. But anyway, that is what it is. He's going to have to live with it. And it's sad that his son was a victim of Democrat policies and choices. Anyway, God bless America. We'll see you next time in Kevin's Corner. Take care.